Welcome to Keith's Broken Boats and other stuff. Working on my boat today, putting the panels around the engine bay. Right then, got all this in roughly now. What I've got now is I've got these little angle brackets. So I'm going to start taking some measurements all round, making sure it's as square as possible. Most of this I know I've got to pretty do much by eye, but I've got a large set square for checking that stuff is square. So I should be measuring up like that and like that to making sure that things have got the right angles. And then I should be getting these brackets and screwing them in here, just to hold everything in position while I get my initial layer of filler around it all to hold this panel and these bits all in place. So let's crack on and we'll see how we get on. I won't be leaving these brackets in place. They're just going to be a temporary fixing. That's typical as it's just started raining. Let's get one in there. As you see, a few marks in the boat where the old panels used to run. So I am sort of kind of trying to work to that. See, there's a piece there where you feel where the fiberglass. So that panel went there, and it went there. If I put that. That's pretty square. And I get a screw in there. On that front edge. That looks like that way. That wants to be pretty square. Come out to there. That's pretty much there. Now I've got all these panels fixed in place with those angle brackets. I've mixed up some body filler, so polyester body filler resin, and I'm just smearing it in between where the wood and the fiberglass meet, and also where the wood panels meet. There it is. You can see I've smeared it in there, and that's sort of gluing everything in place, but it's also giving me the turn of my thumb in all those joints so that the fiberglass isn't kinked tight 90 degrees into all these bends. So I've got a bit of sanding to do now just to smooth it all off a bit and tidy it up. That angle bracket's going because that ear will be cut off, and then I can start getting a bit of fiberglass mat and finally gluing all this top panel in. Right, so I've given it a bit of a sand, taken off some of the nasty stuff. I've used an 80 grit sandpaper, so as I've given myself a bit of a key for the fiberglass to stick to. And I'm going to give all this a wipe and a clean down now, so that I can get some fiberglass resin, fiberglass chop strand mat, and do all my joints. So here we go. Now this is rare for me. I'm actually going to do some fiberglass in and be a little bit prepared. In this tub here, I've got a bit of acetone, and I use that just for putting in the tools that I'm using, the paintbrush, the barb, everything. And I've got that a bit of cloth in there, which I'm using to wipe down all the surfaces where I'm going to be doing some fiberglassing. Just clean any grease or anything, any sort of debris off of those surfaces. And then in my preparation, I'm going to get the chop strand mat that I'm using, and I'm going to cut it up into useful pieces that I'm going to be fixing it into. So once the resin's made, I'm not going to be crawling around inside my boat looking for mat while the resin's going off in the cup. So like I said, just making sure it all fits, cutting it so it will go nicely into the corners, and cutting off the feather edge that's going to go through the top of that hole. That hole in the panel actually is where the steering ram goes through to where the shield fits on in the back. So just cut everything up and get it all ready, and then we'll start fiberglassing. Okay, so I'm going to start mixing some resin now. This is a polyester based fiberglass resin, and I'm going to mix it up in batches of roughly 150 ml at a time. I found this sort of amount it's workable. I'm not the fastest at fiberglassing, so I need to be able to sort of not have too much mix, so it's gone off in the pot before I've finished. So like I said, I've got 150 ml of resin, and I'm going on around about sort of like a 3 to 4% ratio. So there's around about sort of like 5 or 6 ml of hardener going in there, and then I'm going to give it a good wind up. Now, always try and, if you mix in resin, you want hardener into resin, I always wipe around the outside of the cup and try and get it really, really well mixed in. I haven't done much fiberglassing. I've sort of picked up my knowledge of fiberglassing off of YouTube, which is a bit of ironic really. I've watched a YouTube video on fiberglassing so that I can make a YouTube video on me fiberglassing in my boat. I say, what goes around comes around, doesn't it? Anyway, I've got my mat, and I'm going to start painting a layer of resin all round where I'm going to be putting my mat. Once I've painted all this sort of like coating on here, I should then get my mat and start dabbing it into place. Right, so I've positioned my mat in place, and because I've painted that with resin, it sort of roughly sticks to where I want it to be. Then once I've got it all pushed down, it's basically a brush full of resin, and start dabbing it in. So I'm dabbing it in all the way out to the edges, starting from the joint and working my way out. So this is pushing all the air out from underneath the mat, from inside the resin, and pushing it out. So you don't really want any air underneath your fiberglassing, because it sort of defeats the object. I want the mat to be stuck to the hull of the boat and my panels all the way around. I don't want big air gaps in it, because it will just make it weak. So I'm going around with this brush with the resin on. Loads. I'm just putting loads of resin in. There are sort of ratios you can do. So much resin is supposed to cover so many meters. I'm not overly worried about that. All I want to do is get a load of resin in there, so I know that this panel's in there strong and there's no air in it. So as you get more mat, put it up that joint there, and like I say, forcing it right into the joint first. Force it into the joint, and then work my way to the outside edge of the mat. And then any air bubbles that's in there are just pushed out from underneath it. Now I've got this little aluminium roller, and this is a really useful tool if you're doing any glass work. It's got ribs in it, and what it does is it pushes the fiberglass in and works any air out, and it makes sure everything's home. So it's just sort of starting from the joint, work my way out all the way around. Now I'm going to carry on with this. so that I've got all these joints where the woodwork meets the hull and where the panels come together. We've all got a layer of fiberglass over the top of that filler. I'm going to work my way all the way around here and then move on to the next stage. Okay, I'm into my final stage now of doing this, which is applying a layer of gel coat all around the inside of this back of the boat. So I've got some flow coat. Okay, now this is gel coat with a 2%, I think it's about a 2% wax mixture in it, so that it will go off hard. If I was just to paint normal gel coat on here, it would dry tacky. So what this has got, because if the air gets the gel coat, it doesn't go off properly. The surface of it dries tacky. So the wax that's in flow coat, which is the top coat, forms a thin layer over the surface, which stops the air getting into the gel coat, which makes it dry, touch dry, hard. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint all the inside of the back of the boat here with a flow coat to then make it then ready for me to start putting it back together. So with this, I'm going to be using I think it's roughly a 2 to 3% mix. So I've got 150 ml of flow coat there, and I'm going to put in 3 millilitres of hardener. So let me just measure this out. And then I'm just going to paint it on. Now this is going to be quite thick, so it will go on quite thick, because this is like a fiberglass resin, but it's got a pigment in it, which is what gives it that white colour. So I put my hardener in. Now I'm going to give this a really good stir. Like I say, this is quite thick tack, and I'm going to be painting all the inside of the back of the boat where the engine goes. So this is, like I said, this is called a flow coat. So it has a styrene wax in it, mixture of roughly 2%, and that comes to the surface and makes it all dry. Just mix it in really well, making sure getting it around all the edges of the cup. This is real thick, so it should give me a good layer of gel coat surface all the way around the inside of the back of the boat. So I've got my brush. I'm going to start here and just start painting it in, and then when that goes off, all the inside of my boat will be ready to start building, which is the bit that I'm looking forward to doing. I'm not really a painter, so I am literally just piling it on. And away we go, get right into the corners. Keep working it in. This area, I spend quite a bit of time on it. None of this will be seen because it's all under panels and whatnot, but I'll know it's there and I'll know what I've done, so will everybody else that watches it. So it'll all be done to the best of my ability. So I'm going to crack on with this. And I'll show you what it looks like when I've finished. Okay, and this is what it's going to look like in here. All the back done, and up there, all round. On the top. You can't really see much. Top round, in there, all there. So now I can start getting some mechanical bits back in my boat. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe. Bye for now.